Do you want a man to start seeing your worth, to realize how valuable you are to him, to start thinking about how special and amazing you are, to make sure that he doesn't want to lose you? He's scared to lose you. He's worried about it. He doesn't want to lose you, right? So here we're going to talk about how to do that without playing games or pretending you're someone you're not or any of that kind of nonsense. Does that make sense? Hello, my name is Matthew Coast, and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here with me, make sure that you follow me, subscribe to get more awesome videos about great topics on dating and relationships. That's what we're doing right now. All right, so here we go. Okay, so number one is have your own life, right? So focus on your own passions, your own goals, have your own friends, any of that kind of stuff. It's really, really important. A lot of times I talk to women and they're like smothering a guy, right? He can't miss you if you're always there, right? He's not going to be worried about losing you if you're like, attached to his leg and he's walking and he's dragging you along and you're like, he's not going to be worried about losing you. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm talking about here? If you're here with us right now, go ahead and say hi and tell us where in the world you're watching this from. It's cool to see women from all over the world watching these live streams. Okay, so number two is stop being too available. So don't always answer his texts immediately and say yes to last minute plans, right? Have some boundaries, right? Open things up so that you are looking for respect and you respect yourself. And when you respect yourself, what you do is you're not attached to everything. You don't just cancel all your plans and shove everything that you're doing out of the way. You're like, okay, I value myself. And so the only way that I'm going to spend time with another person is if they value and respect me as well. And when you're coming from that standpoint, when you're coming from those belief systems, you're going to automatically start doing things that make it so that he starts valuing you as well, right? And let him work for you. Let him work for your time. Let him work for your attention. Let him earn your a place in your life, right? If you make him earn it, then he will value it a lot more. He will value you a lot more if he earns it. Men, remember this: men value women that they work for and earn. Men value women that they work for and earn. So, number three is setting boundaries, right? If he crosses a line, make sure that you speak up and stand firm, right? The way that boundaries work is it's communicating your desires, it's communicating what it is that you want. And if somebody comes and they disrespect you, they treat you badly, they do something that's against your values, any of that kind of stuff, you communicate what it is that you want. And if they aren't willing to abide by that communication, those desires that you ask for, what you do is you remove yourself from the situation and then you make it so that he has to work in order to get you back in his life. Right? So you are making him value you by having those boundaries, by knowing what it is that you want, by believing in your voice, by speaking it into the universe, by speaking it into existence, by telling people what those boundaries are. They will either respect you, they will either value you, or they will no longer have a place at your table. Does that make sense? If you get what I'm talking about, say I get it in the chat. If you don't get what I'm talking about, go ahead and tell me what questions and things that you have. I'm going to go over those here at the very end. So number four is glow up. Glow up for yourself, right? This is like young and jive jargon that I'm using right now. So focus on self care, whether it's your health, your style, your mindset, any of that kind of stuff. Because when you feel amazing, you want to feel amazing, right? Think about it right now. Like sitting there listening to me or wherever you're at right now, listening to me. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? Right? How are you feeling right now? How do you normally feel every single day? Right? Most people, most women, when I talk to them, they're like, 5, a 6, right? Put it in the comments. Well, like, how are you feeling right now? And then think about this, you know, would you ever really want to date or be in a relationship with a 5 or a 6? I think you know that the answer is no, right? And so nobody else wants to either. And your relationship success, the success of him being attracted to you and wanting to stay attracted to you and wanting you in his life has to do with emotion. We all get into and stay in relationships based on emotion. And the more positive and powerful emotions you have, that you experience, the more he's going to experience those things when he's around you. And then when he's going to see you and he's going to feel it, he's going to see you and he's going to feel it. And then he's going to think of you and he's going to immediately feel it, right? That's what you want. You want him to feel amazing emotions when he's around you. That way, when he immediately associates you with happy and powerful emotions where he's feeling good just thinking about you, and that's when you end up having a really really great relationship because he sees you and he gets excited and he's like, yeah, there she is, let's do it, and then he just wants to kiss you all over the head, and all that kind of stuff. So okay, um number 5. Number 5 is being playful, but not telling everything, right? There's this weird thing that's going on in the dating industry right now where I'll talk to these women and they're like, well, I want to be honest, right? And so they're like, I'm going to be honest about everything, right? And you're like, does that really, like, why? You know what I mean? There's some things that aren't any of his business. Let me give you an example of something that isn't any of his business. Let's say you go on a date and you're sitting there on a date and you can start feeling it in your stomach and all of a sudden it comes out. He doesn't hear it, but you do a little fart. You do a little toot, right? Are you telling him about it? Right? Do you tell him about it? My guess is the answer is no. Why don't you tell him when you fart on a date? Because it's none of his business. It doesn't help anybody for you to tell him about it. And it just, there's no point, right? You're not doing it. It could actually hurt things. So you don't tell him about. Well, here's the thing. Most stuff isn't really any of his business. And the more you're telling everything that's going on, the less he wonders about you. The less he's thinking about, like, what's she doing? What's going on with her? Like, who is she? All these things, because you laid it all out on the table. And so you want to give him things, but you want him to earn it. You want him to work for and earn it, right? And so don't tell everything immediately. Let it build up. Let him earn it, right? Makes sense. So, number 6 is stop chasing him. Don't chase him, right? So how do you know if you're chasing a guy? You're chasing a guy if you're doing the majority of initiating, if you're doing the majority of work, if you're putting in the majority of energy and effort into the relationship more than him, then you are chasing him. And you want to stop doing that, right? The other way you know you're chasing is if you're coming from fear, like, oh, you're coming from desperation. Does he like me? I'm going to reach out. I got to do something. I'm scared, right? You don't want to do that. Don't do it. It's not healthy. It doesn't work. It's not valuable. It'll make him value you less if you chase him. So give him some space. He can't miss you if you're there all the time, right? So you got to create some space. Allow him to come back to you. It's like a cat, right? If you go chase after a cat, which I don't know if you guys have. I've chased after a few cats myself in my life. And when you chase after a cat, the cat's like, "Oh," and he runs off, right? But if you you create a nice tranquil environment and you're like hanging out and you got a little scratching hand coming up and you're scratching the table, scratching your leg a little bit, the cat will end up seeing you and he'll jump up onto your lap and then you're petting the cat. You want to do the same thing with a guy. Don't chase after him. He'll just run away. Instead, you want to create a cool environment, amazing environment that a guy would want to be in, and then allow him to come to you. That's what you want to do. Number 7 is have some options, right? Especially if you're not in a committed relationship, my suggestion is that you have options of men, right? And don't commit to a guy who's not committed to you. A lot of women are like, "Oh, well, Matt, if I date another man, isn't that cheating?" And it's like, "No. If you're not in a committed relationship, it's not cheating." It's another thing that you don't have to tell a guy about, and it's not cheating because you're not in a committed relationship. Once you're in a committed relationship, you don't want to date other guys. But until then, you should have other options. You should have options of men. You should have options of where you get your connection from. You should have options of where you get your excitement and passion from. You should have options of where you get your love from, right? All the things that you are looking for in emotion, you should have options of where you get those emotions from, so that you're not coming from a place of desperation and trying to get it out of that one guy. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm talking about? Say, I get it. If you get what it is that I'm talking about. If you don't get it, go ahead and ask me some questions. I will answer your questions here in a little bit. So we are number 8. Number 8 right now is being confident in your own decisions on what you're doing and what you want, right? Don't second guess yourself or constantly seek his approval, any of that kind of stuff, because having confidence in that, having confidence in yourself, which really all confidence comes from is competence, right? Confidence comes from like an inner knowing and doing things enough so that you feel like you can make the right decisions and do the right things, right? And that's where you want to come from, is a place of confidence, because it can be really, really attractive. Like, there's a part of guys that want, like, I get women that ask me this all the time, where we're like, well, what about guys that are trying to save women? And it's like, yeah, there's a part of men where they want to save you, right? Just like there's a part of a lot of women where they want to save men. There's a part of men that where they want to save women, and a lot of needy women end up getting men because the man feels needed, right? And so that is a valuable thing, to have a space for a man to be there and to appreciate him and what he brings to the table in the relationship. Like, that's a really, really powerful thing. And it's also powerful to have a side of you where you're confident, because if you're constantly needy, you're constantly, like unsure, you don't know what's going on all the time, that eventually gets exhausting for guys, right? Initially, it can be really great because the guy feels like, oh, I've got a job here. I can do things, I'll just pick up and take, do all this. But if you constantly need saving, that's a problem for most guys. Does that make sense? Do you get that? Okay, number 9 is celebrating your wins, right? Have successes and share them with other people as well in your life, right? Have other people where you share them, right? Whenever you are successful in your life, what most people do is they share it, right? And they usually share it with somebody that is really important to them. And you want to share it with your guy if he's really important to you, you're in a committed relationship, but also share it with other people in your life, right? People who also are important to you. That way he doesn't feel like you're like he's everything. He's it, right? Because that's not healthy for either of you. And a lot of times guys can feel a little bit resentful if he's the only thing you have going on in your life. And so it's good to have other people. And so celebrating wins with others can show that and express that, and he can feel that, right? Because you go and talk to your family, you go talk to your friends, you go talk to other people. And so it's important to have other people that you're connecting with and talking to. Number 10 is pulling back if he's taking you for granted, right? So this is what usually happens when a guy starts taking a woman for granted, is that she starts trying to step up, right? Because she feels like she's not being enough for him. And it's a normal and natural thing for us to want to do. But when you do that, what you're communicating is that you don't actually feel like you're enough. You don't actually respect yourself. You don't actually feel like you're worthy. And to a man, that feels kind of gross. And so, what you want to do instead is if he starts taking you for granted, you want to take a step back. You want to communicate what it is that you want. You want to communicate what you feel, but you don't want to, like, if there's that vacuum that comes from him being, from taking you for granted, not being there, not doing all these things, you don't want to fill that vacuum. You don't want to fill that space. Instead, you want to allow that space to sit so that he feels like he wants to fill it. So he feels like he starts realizing that you're pulling back because he's for granted and he feels like he may be messed up and that he needs to make it up to you, right? And that's a much better position for you to be in, right? I talk about the three different layers of how to connect with men. One is your mindset, two is strategy, and three is communication. Right now, we're talking about strategy, which is this idea of putting yourself into a position of being powerful, right? Because being in a powerful position creates attraction, it creates desire, and it's a powerful, powerful thing to do. Does that make sense? So let's go over the 10 again. One is having your own life. Two is stop being way too available. Three is setting boundaries. Four is glow yourself up. Five is being playful but having a mysterious tone to you. Six is don't chase them. Seven is have some options from a few different things, right? Of connection, of emotion, options of emotion. Eight is being confident in your decisions. Nine is celebrating your wins with other people other than just him. And 10 is pull back if you're feeling like you're being taken for granted. So, which of these are you going to try first? Are there other ways that you've found that have helped kind of raise your value in a man's eyes or make him feel like he's worried about losing you? Anything like that? Go ahead and tell us in the chat. And I'd love to hear from some of what you guys are saying. So Teresa on X says exactly. Australia, Colorado. Do we have people on? I'm also on TikTok here. Doopy-doopy-doopy-boo. Kind says, hi, Matt. You and Helena Hart in 2020. Chef's Kiss, my intro to feminine dating. Awesome. Helena is one of my favorites. All right. So thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for being here. Louisiana's girl says, I'm working on myself since my divorce. That's important. It's valuable. Kind says, I'm currently ring shopping. That's what I'm talking about. It's awesome. That is awesome. Good job. Good job, Kind. And then Supernova says, why does it make me feel strange about dating more than one man? Because a lot of times what happens is, it like naturally, I don't think that we probably, especially like, um, back in the day, probably were dating a bunch of people as, especially women weren't probably doing that. And so it can feel, especially if you're new to it, like dating more than one guy at a time can feel a little bit weird. But there's a lot of good reasons to date more than one person at a time. One is that dating is literally the act of going around and finding the right person, right? And so if you go one person at a time and date them for a while and then date another for a while, date another for a while, what ends up happening is that you waste a ton of time, right? It's easier to get attached to a guy where you feel like overly attached, even though he's not committed to you, you end up getting committed to him because he's the only guy you're seeing, right? And so it's a lot better to date around, not sleep around, date around, and until you find the right guy and until you're both on the same page and he wants to commit to you and you want to commit to him. And until you do that, you are dating, right? And dating means that you're not in a relationship. And most of us want to skip the whole dating process because we want to be in relationships. And so it feels better to like think, oh, I found the right person, let's get into a relationship. But if that guy isn't certain about, and that's fine if you do, right? There's nothing wrong with that, especially if he's on the same page. If he's on the same page and you're both like, hey, we've been dating each other for, I recommend that you wait at least a month before jumping into a relationship. But you guys have been dating each other for a month and you're like, hey, you know what? Let's just date each other. Let's be in a relationship. If you decide that, that's totally cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But what the problem I see with most women out there is they will decide on a guy and they're like, okay, he's it, right? And they latch onto his leg and she's, like walking or he's walking and she's like holding onto his leg, like getting scraped against the ground. And he's like, I haven't even decided on you yet, right? He's still dating other people. He's still looking around. He's not committed. Maybe he doesn't even want to be committed. You don't even know, but you've committed to him before he was ready to be in a relationship. And now you're in a really bad position because you're trying to force and manipulate and control this guy to be in a relationship with you. And that just doesn't work very well. And so it's better to keep your options open. Remember this: who you end up with is a direct reflection of the quality and quantity of your options, right? Again, who you end up with is a direct reflection of the quality and quantity of your options. And so if your options is one, you're either going to end up with him or you're going to end up alone. Does that make sense? That's why it's valuable to not commit to a man before he commits to you. So I hope that makes sense. There. Doop de doop de doo. Let's see. What other questions do we have? People here. Tina says, you are so right. Confidence speaks volumes. I'm a feeling like 9. That's what I'm talking about. Feeling like a 9. Donna says, he's told me so much about himself, but has rarely asked me anything. It's been 5 months. He used to text 24/7. Now he will not for days at a time. So this is a conversation that you need to have with him, Donna, right? You're 5 months in, which according to the Matthew Coast dating timeline, which by the way isn't actually my timeline, what we've done is we've looked at thousands of relationships and how people got into relationships, dating scenarios. And what we found is that by the 5-month mark, you guys should be in a committed relationship. I don't know if you are or not, Donna, but 5 months in, you should be. And you should either be in a committed relationship or you should let go of them. That's my suggestion on it. And so let's just assume that you're in a committed relationship. If you are, then you should be talking to each other about what it is that you want, how often you guys want to talk and communicate together, what's normal, what's not normal, right? These are conversations that you should have with him, like just regular conversations that you talk to him about. This is what I want, find out what he wants, and find out where the two of you are, so that if he's doing something, it doesn't feel weird to you because you get what's going on with him. Does that make sense, Donna? You need to talk to him about it. Have a conversation. It's pretty common though, right? It's common that in the initial dating phases, what people do is that they are on their best behavior. They're really excited about somebody. And then over time, because of something that we call the law of familiarity, the law of familiarity states that the more that somebody becomes familiar, right, which happens because you're around somebody, so the more you spend time around somebody, the more you start to take them for granted, even if it's just a little bit. And so what you want to do is, one, you want to shake things up a little bit, and two, you want to have real conversations about your expectations and what it is that you want in the relationship so that you can be on the same page as each other. Does that make sense, Donna? Donna says, I decided not to initiate at all and see what happens. Yeah, and that's okay. What you want to do, because you're past the whole dating time frame, right? One thing you want to do is make sure you're in a relationship. If you're not, you need to have that conversation. And the second thing you need to do is have a conversation about what you want in terms of communication, because just the biggest problem I see, especially on the women's side, I teach both on men on how to date women as well as women on how to date men, and it's more so on the women's side than it is on the men's side, where women will they're like looking for clues, right? And then they're like testing these things. They're like, oh, if I stop messaging him, does he do this? That's fine to do in the dating phase. When you're in the relationship phase, which is what you're in, Donna, you want to stop doing all that stuff and you want to start having real conversations with him, right? Because that's where the real magic happens. Sure, you can still shake things up a bit because you want to have variety, you want to have excitement in the relationship, but just like doing this thing where you're like, oh, I'll just not contact, not initiate at all and see what happens. Like, that's not as good as having a real conversation, finding out what's going on with him and having a conversation with him about it. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see. People getting it. Yeah. Let's see. Is any other questions? Supernova says awesome answer and thank you for the eye opening. If you're listening right now, make sure to like and follow my page and subscribe so that you can make sure you get more videos on how to have a great and amazing relationship with a great awesome guy. So Winarni says, I'm totally butchering your name, I'm sure. Says I stay single because I don't want to lose relationship with God. He keep coming back, but this time I will be more aware. I don't know how I must respond to him because my life feels better now. I afraid if he trying to hurt my feelings again. Um, yeah, you want to make sure you have boundaries and stuff. You want to make sure that you communicate your standards on what it is that you want, right? If a guy leaves and he comes back, make him earn you back. That's what you want to do, is make him earn you, right? He doesn't get a seat in your life unless he earns you, right? And you can have a relationship with God and a relationship with a great guy. In fact, if you choose the right guy, it'll make your relationship to God even closer and more powerful and better. So you can have both, right? You don't need one or the other. This isn't an either or thing. It's a both thing. So it's important. Um, do 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 do. Okay, so Sarah says, Matt, if you could help me with how to approach a boundary conversation about wanting marriage, where and when to have it. We've been together in relationship for 1.5 years. I have mentioned wanting marriage at the beginning, but it seems as though his divorce, he feels marriage has failed him. Thanks in advance. Yeah, Sarah, great question. This is a great question. So here's what you want to do, because um, he already knows, right? So they've done a bunch of studies on this, Sarah, and they found that um, guys know unanimously, it's around 99% of men know by the 6 month mark what kind of a relationship they ultimately want to have with a with a woman that they're dating or they're seeing, right? So he already knows what kind of a relationship that he wants to have with you, right? So the biggest thing, the biggest obstacle he has right now is marriage, right? So he doesn't want to get married. You do. That's the reality of the situation. And so what you need to decide is two things. One is, um, how important is this man to you? And two, how important is getting married to you, right? And uh, what you're probably going to tell me, because I may or may not have had this conversation multiple times with many different women, is that is that you want both the man and the relation, and the marriage, right? Um, but there's an obstacle, and it's an obstacle you found probably early on, but usually what ends up happening is you go, oh well, we'll figure it out, or we'll work it out down the line, right? If marriage is absolutely a necessity to you, then my suggestion is that you make it a requirement, right? And you put that relationship and you put that marriage up on the pedestal, and you take him off of it, and you say, this is where I'm going, and I want you to be there with me, and I want to, have you in my life. But it's very important to me because of my faith, because of my religion, because of my, relationship with God, or whatever your reason is, that I get married. And not getting married to me will feel like a betrayal of myself. It'll feel like a betrayal of, my faith. It'll feel like a betrayal of, whatever it is. Um, and so what you need to do is have a talk with him, sit down and have a talk with him about it, and let him know this. And the other suggestion that I have is that you start pulling back. Is that you start you so there's three things that you need to do here. One is you need to have the conversation. Two is that you want to make him feel really loved and cherished and taken in, like, treated very, very well in the relationship that you have. And then three, what you want to do is start pulling back some, right? Hopefully you don't live together right now. If you do, you might want to rethink that. And You want to create some space and start giving him some space and start living your life, start separating your life from him, and let him know that you really want this, and this is absolutely a deal breaker for you, right? And that it's something that at some point you'll end up having to walk away if he's not willing to get into, if he's not interested in marriage, right? Um, and if marriage is a problem for him, which it sounds like it is because of pain in his past, right? A lot of people, a lot of guys have problems in their past because they were, they had their money taken from them in a bad divorce or something like that. What you want to do is all of this stuff, the way that you want to think about it is it's a negotiation, right? So you're negotiating what it is that you want, right? So what you need to do is figure out what about marriage is really, really important, and find out what he is most afraid of happening in marriage, right? So him being afraid of marriage doesn't make any sense. What really makes sense is him being afraid of divorce, right? Of him being, afraid of getting his money taken away. Him being afraid that, you're going to change. Him being afraid that, something else is going to happen. And so you want to find out exactly what that is, right? And you want to have a real conversation around it. And you want to get specific on exactly what he's afraid of. And you want to open yourself up about your fears and your desires and what's going on with you and how it makes you feel when he tells you that he, doesn't want to be married or whatever, right? What's going on with you? Because a lot of times just getting into that, like, vulnerable feminine state, and expressing your emotions, a lot of times guys will step up around it, right? And right now what's going to happen is he's going to start feeling confused, right? This is what always happens with guys in this situation, is he's going to start feeling confused because he's going to be conflicted. He's going to want one thing and he's going to be afraid of something else. And the question is, which one is going to win? And we can help you with that situation. If you need some help, I suggest that you go and talk to my team. You can talk to my team, and we can help you with your situation. Just go to matthewcoast.com. You can jump on a call with a member of my team. They can talk to you about coaching. They can talk to you about your situation and see if we can help you from there. Yeah, that's kind of what you want to do, is you want to start having a real conversation around it, and you want to make sure you let him know what you want. You want to get specific about what's going on with him and what his fear is really about, and you want to be real and honest and raw and vulnerable with him. Okay, so let's see. Any other? So we've got Mog 154 just got the gift giver badge. I don't even know what that means. Did you give me a gift? I hope you guys are giving me gifts. I appreciate gifts. Anybody, if anybody gives me gifts, I appreciate it. So Myrna says, I need to pull back because I've been left on delivered since 7 p.m. yesterday. Will not chase. Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to pull back for sure. Definitely need to pull back. There's a policy reminder thing. I don't know what's going on with TikTok. I'm just on the TikTok thing. Constantly confused about what's happening on the TikTok stream. But it's a fun and interesting platform. I'll give it that. So, okay, let's see. So does that make sense, Sarah? Okay, Gail says, I messed up by starting to caught feelings for a guy and I started buying him gifts. Yeah, the catching feelings part isn't the mess up, but starting to buy guys gifts is not a good it's not a good look, Gail. And I realized he hasn't taken me on a first date and he doesn't even call me. So I so I've checked my feelings. See, this is one of the reasons why we talk about character first, right? Going for character over chemistry. Because when you go, like, one of the biggest mistakes that women make when they are choosing men is that they will choose the guy that they feel the most attracted to. And there's nothing wrong with being really attracted to a guy. But when that's the basis of your decision, what ends up happening is that you end up ignoring all the red flags. You end up like getting with a guy that isn't really the right guy for you, right? You start ignoring all the things that he should be doing. You start over pursuing and chasing and doing all these things you shouldn't. This is what happens. And it sounds like this is what happened with Gail. It's okay, Gail. We've seen this happen before. It's all right. You're in good company, right? We've probably all done this. Um, he doesn't call me, so I've checked my feelings and I've decided to pull back. We started off rocky and I don't know what to do. Should I let him know that I'm interested? Um, so I'm not sure what you're trying to say here. You're talking about like over chasing, buying him gifts. Oh, so it sounds like you guys aren't even actually dating. So what I would do, Gail, is I wouldn't. So there's a big myth out there, Gail, and here's what the big myth is. The big myth is that if you just tell somebody how you're feeling about them, they will realize that you are the one, the special one. And that is literally the opposite of what most what usually happens. Think about this. Maybe you've experienced this before where you met a guy and he was really into you, right? You could tell he was really into you. He was doing all these things where he was buying you gifts, he was doing stuff for you. He confessed his feelings and how much he liked you and how much he thought that you were just awesome and all these different things. Tell me, how did you feel about that man? Were you like, oh, perfect, great guy, loves me to death? Or were you like, that's a little bit way too much, way too soon, kind of gives me the ick, right? That's usually what happens when people do this. And so instead of confessing your feelings to him, Gail, what you should do is find out if he's interested in you. And the best way to do that is through something called PMI flirting, where you basically accuse him of being interested in you, right? I mean, you've been, like giving him lavish, praise and interest so far, so he probably already knows that you like him. What you should do is find out if he likes you. You should pull back, stop doing any of that stuff. If you guys haven't even gone on dates yet, definitely don't buy him anything, right? Just don't do any of that kind of stuff. That stuff does not create attraction, right? Giving people gifts where they're not even that into you, haven't started dating them, that does not create attraction between two people, right? Creating space, connecting with them, building a connection, creating variety, creating excitement, that creates chemistry, that creates attraction. And that's what you want to focus on, not giving him things and not confessing all your feelings to him. Instead, You want to find out if he's interested in you. So doop de doop de doop de doo. So let's see. Heart Cowgirl says, if a man is stressed, pulling away, what do I do? The best thing you can do is give him space. So just let him pull back, right? That's the best thing that you can do. If he's stressed and he's like, I'm really stressed right now, I know there's all these things happening, right? He's creating space there, right? And we were talking about this a little bit ago. Instead of filling that space, what you want to do is you want to leave that space there, right? Because what's going to happen if you fill that space is he's going to feel like he doesn't need to do anything and everything's great and whatever, and then you're going to get in this precedent of chasing him and doing all these things, and you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to leave that space so that he looks at that space and he goes, oh, I feel like I need to fill it. I feel like I need to apologize. I feel like I need to step up. I feel like I need to make it up to her, right? That's what you want him to feel. You want him to feel like he needs to earn you. What you don't want him to feel is like he's already got you and he doesn't need to do anything. And so, whatever's fine. I'll just be me and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's what you want to do. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's see what else we got. Boop, 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 boop. Laura says, I had a guy I was dating for 5 months text me after not contacting me for 3 months. I waited a few days to text him back, telling him I was confused that he did after this time apart. It has been 6 days and he has not responded. Should I reach out to him again? No. No, 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 no. Should not reach out to him again. Just leave him alone. Let him come back to you if he wants to, and make him earn it, right? We keep talking about this idea. Like, too many women are devaluing their their time, their attention, their text messages, their emotions, right? If you don't value these things, you're going to give it away to whoever, right? This guy is misbehaving right now, right? He is disappearing and then coming back and disappearing again. That is bad behavior. You do not reward that behavior at all, right? He is showing you that he should not be taken seriously as a man that is in the running for becoming, right? You are in charge. Let's just start this out, Laura. Is you are in charge of a company. It's called Laura Marianne's Love Life Inc. Right? We're just going to call it that. And you have a position that's open, and this position's open, and the position's called Your Man, right? And so this guy is applying to be in the position of Your Man, right? And he's right. So what happens when somebody goes for a job interview, right? You tell them what you expect in the position, right? You tell them what the benefits are. You tell them all these different things, and then he needs to show up every day, and he needs to do his job. He needs to show up on time. He needs to communicate with you if something's wrong. He needs to do all these things, right? What he shouldn't be doing is he shouldn't be showing up late. He shouldn't be hanging out by the water cooler playing slap and tickle with Susie, when he should be working. He shouldn't be, disappearing for months at a time, sending you a text message and then disappearing again, right? If an employee or a candidate for a job position did that, what would you do to that person? If you were a good employer, you'd fire them immediately. You'd say, hey, just don't come back. Right? We don't have time for this nonsense here at, Laura Marianne's Love Life Inc. We need a candidate who's serious about this position, and it's clear to me that you are not serious about this position. So please don't come back. Just go on with yourself and don't come back, right? And if he does want to come back, if you're like, wow, he's just seemed like such a great candidate, right, for the position, what you need to do is make very clear what the requirements are for him to get the position. Tell him what you want and tell him what needs to happen. And if he's not willing to do that, just stop talking to him because he's not serious. He's just going to waste your time. He's going to waste your time, your energy, your money, your attention, your life. You're going to be a worse off as a result of having this man in your life than you are if you just cut him off completely and say, just please don't ever come back. You're horrible, horrible right now. So I don't want this, right? Um, I hope that makes sense. So Lenora says, he told me to pay for a flight to go see him. I said goodbye and never called him back. Okay. All right, Lenora. Thanks for sharing. Um, Maria Queen 1 says, I have a date tomorrow. Should I reminder him? Well, you can. It's if you have a date tomorrow, right? He should remind you, right? He should call or send a text message as a reminder. If you want to send him a message, it's totally okay to do that. It's not a big deal, right? Hey, are we still on? It's totally okay. Not a big deal at all, right? And if you do send that message, which, if he hasn't contacted you, right, you should either assume that you're not meeting up or you should send him that message just to confirm, right? If you do send him that message, one of a couple of things are going to happen. One, he's going to message you back and he's going to tell you, yes, we're still on, right? That's the best case. Second scenario is that he's going to message you and say, hey, I got busy with this and I can't go anymore, right? That means you're not on, right? Which means that he needs to make it up to you, right? He needs to earn you. He needs to show you that he's serious. And then third thing that can happen is that he doesn't respond at all, which means that you're not on, right? Which means that you don't show up. So, yeah, absolutely. Send him a message, let him know, and he can let you know what's going on, right? And then when you're on the date, let's just assume here that he does want to meet up with you. Have a conversation with him about this. This is a great conversation. Don't shame him, don't attack him, don't do any of that kind of stuff. But what you want to do is just let him know that like you really talk to him, be like, hey, what do you think it's normal for guys to um you know like confirm the date the day before the date or before the date happens, right? And just have a conversation with him about it and just be curious about it and see what he thinks and let him know that you'd really appreciate it if in the future he could let you know because you want to make sure that you're going on the date and you don't really know him that well yet, and so um if he doesn't, that you're just going to assume that he's not going to meet up with you and you're not going to go. Right? That's what you should do. That's the conversation that you should have with him about it. Does that make sense, Maria Queen? Does that make sense, Maria Queen? Boo boo. Um, Wanda Lynn says, I left TikTok and here you are. I enjoy learning from you, Matthew. Such great advice, so much common sense. Well, I appreciate you being here. There, Wanda Lynn. Wanda Lynn, appreciate you. Little Miss Smarty Pants says, he's afraid you are going to be his ex, but you're your own person. That's right, you are your own person. That's right. Let's see. Doop de doop. Keep liking my live if you're on, especially if you're on TikTok. Like my live. If you're not on TikTok, like my live too. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Helps me make sure that we can do this. Um, okay, so Holly Quick says, "Hi Matt, a guy I've been seeing for about 6 weeks. He texts me every day. Yesterday, I didn't hear from him at all. This morning at 8:45, he texted me good morning. I'm kind of upset because I didn't hear from him yesterday. Don't really feel like saying good morning, but am I acting too crazy because we've only been seeing each other for about 6 weeks? Yeah, you should just respond to him, right? The one of the problems that we've run into in this modern day society is that everybody like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you know, to the beginning of human time, we have not had text messages, right? We haven't had text messages. And so suddenly we've got text messages now, and we're texting each other all the time, and we expect that we are going to hear from each other all the time. But until our lifetimes, that has never existed before in human history, right? And we are getting trained right now by social media, by these dating apps, by Amazon, by everything to expect things right now, right? We order a pizza, it shows up right now, right? We order something online and it shows up with a drone the same day, right? We send a message on Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media channel, we get a response right back, right? We're being trained for unrealistic expectations of what things should be like, right? And then we create these expectations because we're experiencing all this instant stuff. And then when things aren't instant, we get upset. And my suggestion is to relax a bit around that because it's not that big of a deal. Back in the day, people would talk to each other, every couple of days, once a week, something like that. They certainly weren't texting each other every single day, all the time, sending good morning texts and stuff like that, right? That just didn't exist. And now we've created a culture where we expect it, and if it doesn't happen, that we start getting upset and feeling like there's something wrong with the other person. In reality, our expectations are just so ridiculously high that it can create a problem. So my suggestion is that you relax a bit on it, right? And have a conversation about what uh, what is normal, right, for him and for you. That way, you guys are on the same page because he might be doing this, right? It's only 6 weeks. He might be doing this everyday good morning thing because he's so excited because he's just met you, right? That's a normal thing that guys do. And so, what you want to do is you want to have a conversation about what he actually thinks is normal in dating, in a relationship, all that kind of stuff. That way, if something does happen where it's outside of that, or where he's texting every day, but he doesn't really think that that's totally normal all the time, for the rest of your lives, then you don't get so caught up on, oh my God, he didn't send me a text message, right? Because it's not really that big of a deal. Um, and so, yeah, I think that your feelings are valid, right? But you need to realize that those feelings aren't just because that's how things should be. Those feelings are trained. You've been trained to feel that way. And it's not fair to anybody, including yourself. And it creates a lot of problems in dating and relationships because we have all kinds of warped ideas about how things should be. And so I'd let go of that if I were you. And instead, I would get curious and connect with him and figure out where he's at. Does that make sense, Holly Quick? Okay. All right, let's see. Michigan Lion says, "How do you make him earn it?" Well, you make him invest, right? That's earning it, is investment, not financially investment, although that can be a part of it. What you're talking about is um, attention, energy, emotion, effort, right? These are the things that make it so that a man earns it, right? And he's going to earn it, and then he's going to value you more as a result. That's how that works. Does that make sense? Doop-a-doo-doop-a-doo-doop-a-doo. Daphne became number 3 member on the team. Thanks, Daphne, for joining my TikTok team or whatever's going on over here. Um, okay, so Mona says, I said I on him. I told him maybe it's better we don't talk anymore. He didn't reply. He just distanced himself. Well, that sounds about normal. Maybe I'm just afraid to like him. Yeah, I mean, if you tell a guy that you shouldn't talk anymore, you basically said, "Hey, let's not talk." Right? That's so he's not going to like if he has any self-respect at all, he's not going to chase you. If you reject, that's basically you rejecting a guy. If you reject a guy, if he has any self-respect at all, he will leave you alone permanently. If you're afraid to like him, that's another thing altogether. That's usually because of pain in your past or, fear of something happening, right? It's based on fear. You're coming from a place of fear right now. If you're afraid of liking him, it's because you're coming from fear. And so you want to shift that. And you said, if I was coming from a place where I loved myself and am open to love and I'm connecting with my love and I'm letting go of this fear, then how would I act if I was coming from that place where I was confident and I was self assured and I believed in my value and I believed great things are going to happen in my life. I believe that I'm confident, that I'm competent and intelligent enough to make great decisions. If I came from that space, if I believe that, that great things were going to come into my life and that I could make great decisions, how would I act differently than I'm acting right now, Mona? That's what you want to look at. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Mona? Okay. Do, 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 do. So, oh, oops. Uh, Winar, Winarni says, no, he is long distance, never met. Don't take any man seriously if you've never met him before. Do not take any man seriously if you haven't met him in person, right? My suggestion is that you don't talk to a guy that you haven't met in person for more than 2 weeks. Because a lot of people out there are just going to waste your time. They're going to waste all your time. They're going to waste your money. They're going to waste your life, right? They're going to waste your emotions. And so I wouldn't I wouldn't allow yourself to get attached to a guy that you've never met in the real world before. Definitely don't want to do that. Okay, so Mona says, should I tell him I'm afraid? Yeah, I mean, at this point, um, that's probably the best thing that you can do if you want to open it up, right? He might still end up rejecting you because if he's coming from a healthy place, he's going to recognize that you're coming from pain and fear, Mona, because that's where you're coming from, right? You know it, I know it, we all know it. You're coming from a place of pain where you've been hurt in the past, and you're coming from a place of fear where you're afraid of getting into a new relationship. And so that takes a lot for somebody to be willing to allow that in, because what's going to happen, Mona, is the same thing that you've been doing is going to continue happening, right? You are potentially going to hurt him, right? Because you're afraid of getting hurt. And so because you're afraid of getting hurt, you're going to pull back, right? And so whenever something comes up where it's like, oh my God, this is getting serious, this is getting real, you're going to end up pulling back because that's your trauma speaking. And so what you need to do, Mona, is you need to start healing, right? You need to forgive, you need to let go, you need to start healing. Um, with this particular guy, sure, you can, be vulnerable and real with him and let him know, be like, hey, I'm really sorry. I was just really scared. And just be honest with him. Be like, hey, I got hurt in the past and I was scared of liking you. But you seem like a nice guy. If you want to give it another shot, like, I'm open to it. Let's talk. And if he is willing to deal with the the fear and the pain that could potentially come up for him as a result of allowing you into his life because you're not fully healed yet, which means that there's potentially going to be some back and forth, hot and cold behavior from you to him. Um, if he's open to that, then he might let you in. But just realize that he might not be open to that, because if a guy has been through that, right? If you're a person and you've dated somebody who's not been healed from their pain, right? You know that there's going to be hot and cold behavior, that they're going to act erratic sometimes, and that can be very painful to the person who's in the relationship with you. Um, but if they're willing to do it, that's great. If not, just realize that it's not for everybody, and it's okay if he doesn't want to. Does that make sense, Mona? Um, Daphne says, what to do if a man just wants to be friends with benefits, but you fall in love easily? You don't do it. Don't do it, Daphne. Don't do it, Daphne. It's not good for you. It's not. It's gonna. This is gonna end in you having a lot of pain, Daphne. So don't do it. This is gonna end in heartbreak. It's gonna end in pain. It's gonna end in regret. It's gonna end in anger. It's gonna end in you being angry at yourself for not listening to him from the beginning. You're going to be angry at him because of what he's going to end up doing to you. He's telling you who he is and what's going to happen in your future, Daphne. So do not, absolutely do not uh, get into a friend with benefits situation with this man. Please, for everybody's sake, Daphne, for my sake, for your sake, for everybody listening's sake, please don't get into a friend with benefits situation with this man. I recommend this for everybody. Public service announcement. Ladies, do not get into friend with benefits situations with guys. Do not do it. I have a community filled with women who have gotten into painful friend with benefits situations where they end up wanting something more with a guy who doesn't want that with them, and it is a painful situation to be in. Sure, we can help you get through it, but it's better to not get into it in the first place. Okay, so there's some more questions and stuff, but I gotta get going. So thank you everybody for being here with me today. I appreciate you, and I will speak with you again soon. Talk to you later. Have a good day.